Hi, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Time Bandit. I am coming before you today, yet with another message. Well, I'm hoping that you watch this and that it opens your eyes if they are not open already. This is from the Lynn Leahz channel. I respect her, and God bless her soul for bringing us this information.
The mystery of Pergamon. Well, this is a real thing from ancient times, but it's not a holy thing. It's an unholy thing linked to the enemy. But you see how real the enemy is in Revelation. Pergamon, to the church of Pergamon, he says the throne of Satan, where Satan dwells, the throne of Satan. Why? Pergamon was a pagan place. You went to the mountain of Pergamon. You had all these pagan things, and the key thing they had was the altar of Pergamon. The altar of Pergamon is an altar to the god Zeus, the head of the gods, and the Bible calls it the throne of Satan. As the gospel spreads to the Roman Empire, eventually people start abandoning all these things. The altar of Pergamon falls into disuse. It falls into ruins. It's gone. The throne of Satan is dormant for about almost 2,000 years. But then what happens? Then in the 19th century, a man starts uncovering the throne of Satan, the altar of Pergamon. And he sends the pieces back to his homeland. In his homeland, they reconstruct the altar of Zeus, the altar of Pergamon, throne of Satan. What was his homeland? His homeland was Germany. When Hitler was railing, and you see him, railing satanically, he is standing on his platform that he had especially built, which is a recreation of the altar of Pergamon. It's a throne of Satan. Here Hitler is speaking from the throne of Satan in Nuremberg. Remember, the enemy hates the Jewish people, wants to destroy the Jewish people. There's no accident this is all happening. He wants to wipe them out. So he uses Hitler as this man who's possessed. You have the armies of the West, the American Allied Army coming from the West. You have the Red Army coming from the East. And it's like the whole world's being drawn to the city where it all began, the devastation, the place of the throne of Satan. What happens now? What happens to the world? What happens is America and Russia are in Berlin. Berlin, the enemy wants destruction, and he wants the world to be destroyed, and he's the god of division. What happens is Berlin is divided in two, and that the division of the entire world is going to begin in the city of the altar of Satan. From that, it's going to come the Cold War. From that, Berlin is divided, Germany is divided, the world is divided as two warring camps ready for destruction. Let me just fast forward for a second. What we're going to see in this one is that all of us here, our lives were almost destroyed, linked to the altar of Satan. That everyone who's watching this, either your life would have been killed, would have been destroyed, or your life never would have happened if the enemy had his way. The enemy is the destroyer. So first you have the entire war. Most of our lives, we grew up, we went in air raid drills, get your bomb shelters, because there was this threat of destruction over the whole world, beginning in Berlin where the altar was. This was the center of the Cold War, the same city where it was. But what happened to that altar? When, the Nazis had it, what happened now? What happened was the altar at the end of the war passed from the Nazis and went into the hands of the Red Army, the Soviet Union. So you went from Hitler, the Nazism, the worst evil then. Now it goes to the key evil of modern times. They have the throne of Satan. They have the altar. So, and in fact, that's when the Soviet Union really comes out. That's when you have not just, the Soviet Union, that's when the Soviet Union begins taking over. That's when all of a sudden Eastern Europe is under the iron grip of the Soviet Union. Then the world, and then China becomes, and then one out of every three people in the world is under this bondage of the power that has the throne of Satan. And so, in the times of the Bible, or in between the Testaments, you had that throne with Antiochus, when he sat on the Temple Mount, the altar of Zeus, same thing. And what did he do? He banned the word of God. He persecuted God's people. Well, what happened all over the world What happened through communism, which had the throne? They banned the word of God. They persecuted God's people, threw God's people into prison camps, made it illegal to follow God. Same thing. Who's doing that? Satan's doing that. At the same time, the Soviet Union, what else are they against? They're against Christians. I mean, communism. What else were they against? They were against Jews. They were the chief, if you remember, it's not so long ago, they were the arch enemy of Israel. They tried to destroy Israel. They funded all the terror. They funded every enemy of Israel. They helped start wars to destroy Israel. So who's that? That's Satan. They had the throne of Satan. Not only that, here's something else. In 1948, now the altar is still in Berlin, but it's under the Soviet Union's power. But in 1948, they actually take the altar from East Berlin and bring it to the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union actually has the altar now.
Now?
Well, no. Well, there's more to it.
Oh, my.
There's more to it. Where's that altar?
Yeah.
And so...
I mean, my mind's going crazy because all the players, yeah. We've been there and done that, and it sounds a little bit what's going on in America right now. My God,
there's
God,
a lot.
what's going on?
When we get to the last part.
Yeah,
Okay.
my brain's
Yes.
going to explode.
Oh,
here.
boy. Okay, Rabbi, keep going.
So the year they take it, it was in Berlin up till 1948, then they move it.
Uh-huh.
Well, in 1948, suddenly the world is brought to a brink of potential destruction. It's the Berlin crisis. The Soviet Union cuts off Berlin. There's a whole thing going before America. It lasts till about 1949. Now the altar is in Russia. You don't have any more problems like that in Berlin until they return the altar to Berlin, which I'm going to mention in a moment. What happens, but here's something else about communism. Marx. There's something about Karl Marx. Karl Marx was the son of rabbis. At one point, he considered Christianity, but he rejected Christianity. And he did something. Now listen to what Karl Marx wrote. He wrote kind of a poem. Listen to what he wrote. He said, "A God has snatched from me everything. Nothing but revenge is left to me. I will build my throne high overhead. Cold, tremendous shall its summit be. I will build my throne high." What does God say that the enemy said? He said, "I will ascend into the heaven. I will exalt my throne." That's what it's like Satan is speaking, as he spoke through Hitler, is speaking through Karl Marx. I will build my throne. And then what does he say? He goes on to say in what Marx wrote, "The prince of darkness has sold it to me, this sword. He has sold me a sword. And it beats the time, it gives me the signs, ever more boldly I play the dance of death." And then in the poem, Marx speaks to humanity. He says, "I have power to crush you. The abyss yawns in darkness. You will sink down, and I will follow, laughing, whispering in your ears, descend, come with me. I bring the world to ruins." What does the Bible say about Satan? It says, who is this one who destroys cities, brings the world to desolation? So here now is the next move of how you take the Bible is real, it's serious. When it says something about the devil, it's real. And so here you have that going on. Now, what happens? What happens? One other thing here. There's a boy who is born in Georgia, not our Georgia, but their Georgia. His name is Bessarius Yugashvili. He joins the Bolsheviks. He drops his name, and takes up the name Man of Steel, which is Stalin. Here is now Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin became the dictator, the ruler over this, with the throne of Satan in his country now, in his nation. He is now communism. When Russia takes this in 1948, now it seals the grip on the Iron Curtain. All these nations are under communism. Stalin is ruling. He is he's killing millions of people, throwing Christians in, hating the Jews, all these things. Here's the thing. The altar of Satan was unearthed in 1878. Joseph Stalin was born in 1878, the same year that the altar of Satan comes back in the world. A little baby is born who's going to be used of Satan. And so now, what happens here now is another thing. We said that the altar of Zeus, or Pergamon, was an altar of burnt offerings. It's the altar of, and the word in Greek is Holocaust. So we've got the Holocaust with Hitler. Now it's in the power of the Soviet Union, And there's one other phrase that's used. When you hear the word Holocaust, there's two applications. One is what happened to the Jewish people under Hitler. The other phrase is nuclear holocaust. So Satan is bent on destruction and burning and fire. What happens? The year after Russia gets the altar, they get the power of nuclear holocaust. It becomes, now the world is armed, and most of us grew up with the threat of nuclear holocaust over. The enemy would want to destroy every person in this room, everybody watching. And so here begins this new age of that. Now what happens is, now in 1958, Russia returns the altar to East Berlin. Still under their control, but now it's back in the city that it was. All of a sudden, there's been no issues, no conflicts in Berlin, but all of a sudden, in 1958, all of a sudden there's another heating up. The world is brought again to another brink, centering on Berlin where the altar is, as Khrushchev demands that America gets out of Berlin. All the Allies get out of Berlin. He gives them 6 months. There's a threat back and forth, and this conflict goes on. You can read it. This is the Second Berlin Crisis. When the altar is returned, this lasts into Kennedy's reign and Kennedy's presidency. Here's what happens. In the beginning of Kennedy's presidency, 1961, Khrushchev gives, actually that's when he might have said get out. Now he gives Kennedy 6 months to get out of Berlin. Kennedy responds by activating 150,000 soldiers. And there's for a future conflict in Berlin centered on how the whole world is centering on destruction over where the city of the altar. And now, August 13th, 1961, a barbed wire fence goes in the middle of Berlin, divided up. Then comes the Berlin Wall. Shortly after the wall goes up, there's a standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union on each side of the wall. I mean, they could see each other at different times. Kennedy is told that we don't have the means to defend Berlin except by using nuclear weapons. That's how he's counseled. The general next to him says, listen, you might as well strike because there's going to be atomic war, so you go nuclear. America is preparing for nuclear war. Khrushchev is on the other side. They're preparing for nuclear war. All focusing in the middle of it is the altar that would bring destruction. We almost were destroyed, every one of us, from where that altar was, number one, right there. What happens is, in 1962, next year, which almost destroyed, this is the closest we ever came to destroying the world. Almost wiped out everyone. Here's what happened. In May, Khrushchev approaches Fidel Castro to put missiles on Cuba that could strike America. The plans are approved in July. In August, American intelligence begins picking something up. The missiles arrive in September. In October, America has the first photographs of this, confirmed in mid-October. The chief of staff in America says the only solution is a full-scale invasion of Cuba. October 22nd, Kennedy appears before the entire country. Some here may remember it. And he says that there is nuclear missiles is focused here on America from Cuba, and that any strike in the hemisphere, there will be world war, and we are going to blockade the island of Cuba to not let any Soviet ships coming. China announces they have 650,000 soldiers or Chinese people who are ready to attack in this. You have a world war ready. America puts a blockade. A Soviet ship goes through it. Actually, people don't realize they actually broke through. They continued working on it. Castro urges Khrushchev to send nuclear weapons to America. He's afraid America's going to attack. He says, send nuclear weapons. The world is one button away from nuclear destruction. At the same time, a secret communication goes back and forth between Khrushchev and Kennedy, and even that is on a pit. It can go in any direction, but something happens. It's only at one moment the closest we ever came to destruction comes to an end, and there was a secret in that communication that was never revealed at the time that caused the end of it. And that secret is linked to the ancient mystery of Pergamon. Let me tell you what that is as we bring this home for now. Khrushchev believed that if he put weapons in Cuba facing America, he would have leverage to take Berlin to get America out. So it's again that city of Berlin. He wants that city. That's where the altar is. But secondly, the secret story is this. In April 61, Khrushchev is near the Black Sea. He's near his Secretary of Defense or some official who points over the Black Sea and says America just placed nuclear missiles on the other side of this sea focused to Russia, that they in a second you could be destroyed. Khrushchev says, well, wonders out loud, what if we put missiles in Cuba facing America to do the same thing? The United States had placed missiles right outside the Soviet Union in 1961. And so here's what happened. So in April, that's when Khrushchev says, let's do it. Then they put the missiles within months, and he makes the decision next thing. So the crux of the secret communication was Khrushchev said to Kennedy, remove those missiles here, and we will remove the missiles there. Kennedy said, we'll do it, but the condition is it will not be made known. We will take it out, but it'll be a secret. So that's what happened. So now here's the thing. The world was almost destroyed by missiles that were never launched, the missiles in this place that were focusing on Russia. Where was it? Where were those missiles that almost destroyed the world? The missiles were in Turkey, the land of the altar of Pergamon, the place where the throne of Satan had always been. The Soviet Union had the altar of Pergamon. This was now Turkey, the place there. Where in Turkey? Turkey has like 80 provinces, 80 states, so it's a lot of small things. They were placed in one small province, the province of Izmir. Izmir is the province of Pergamon.
Oh.
The missiles that almost destroyed the world were in the place of Satan, in the region of Pergamon. But not only that. And here you have, what is the altar about? Holocaust, fire, destruction. Here the missiles are there in the land of that. But here's one more thing. What were those missiles? The missiles that almost caused us to all be gone in the region of Pergamon were called, they had a name on them, they were called the Jupiter missiles. Jupiter is Zeus. Zeus is the god of the altar of Pergamon. It's the altar of Zeus. There's the missiles of Zeus in the place of Zeus, in the place of the altar of Satan. And here, it says in Ephesians 6:16, it says the enemy throws fiery darts, Well, the word in Greek is for dart or flaming is poro, means to ignite fiery. The word for darts is belos, which means, listen, not just darts and arrows, it literally means missile.
Oh my goodness.
So here, flaming missiles from the throne of Satan, the whole world. I mean, and we've just, you see how real the Bible is. How real, people, when God, when I came to the Lord, and people said, I said, okay, I believe in God, but Satan is real, so real, and you'd have to ignore history, ignore the Jewish history and all that. It's real, there's a real force. So let me just bring, another time we will bring it forward to what's happening about the end times and this altar. But before that, let me just give a word from this, quick word, and that is this. Number one, what does it tell you? Everything the enemy ever presents you with in your life, every temptation, don't make no mistake about it, it is there to destroy you. Everything, no matter how good it looks, no matter whether it's money, whether it's temptation of sex, temptation of an affair, it is to destroy you. So when you see that temptation, look through it, see it as if a man was standing at your door with a knife and so I want to destroy your family, and so that's the temptation. See it like that. See the enemy who's behind it, who is there with one purpose. You give into that, it's to destroy everything you love, destroy. So treat that sin like the plague, treat it like Satan, which is what it is. Number one. Number two, the enemy is the destroyer. And so, and he's tried to destroy the Jewish people, tried to destroy the church, tried to destroy every one of us. And so what does that tell you? The enemy tries to destroy the works of God. He hates God. Anything with the image of God, he wants to destroy. So if the enemy is trying to destroy you, he's trying to destroy your life. What does it say about your life? It means your life must be important to God. Your life must be counting something for God. There must be a purpose on your life.
Yes.
There must be a calling on your life.
Yes.
That's why the enemy wants to destroy you. Otherwise, he wouldn't care.
Amen.
It's because of God. Because he fights the purposes of God. So therefore, when he tries to intimidate you, invalidate you, discourage you, it's because God has a purpose on your own life, your existence. God made you for a purpose, for a calling, for such a time as this. So wage that war. The Bible says don't abstain from these things which are warring against you. Wage your war against that sin. Wage it with fury against that fear, against that habit, against that entanglement, by the power of faith and the power of love, the power of the God of life, the God of Israel, because when all is said and done, everything the enemy tries to do in the end comes to nothing. When you stand, and everything he's tried to do to destroy the church, the Jewish people, and the world could not do it, because the God of Israel lives. The God of our lives is alive and well.
Amen.
And serve him, and you'll be on the winning side. Stand strong in the power of his might, and you'll win.
What so many people, when you see the altar of Satan, I mean, he allows it to get dug up.
Yeah.
They move it.
Yeah.
And it's like evil moves with it.
Yeah.
You know, I've often asked people, I said, do you know there's a God? Do you believe in it? You know, people that I didn't know for sure. And people say, well, I'm not sure there's a God. But you know what? Every single person I've ever asked, do you believe there's a devil? No matter what their faith is, they always say, oh, yeah, I know there's a devil because he's after me all the time, or something like, they'll say something like that. Yet we know you have such amazing evidence of the throne of Satan and what effect just that had on devastation of evil. And as you're going through these, and we won't take time to go into this detail, but one of the nothing events that took place in the last few weeks was Russia has declared war. They ordered us out of Syria. So here they are. You brought us through Russia on your little tour here of this evil situation. What's happened in Germany? Germany, their stock market has crashed.
A quarter, as I've been told, has been wiped out.
And desperate times. But Volkswagen is under one of the worst scandals in the history of the car industry. And their stock market, their stocks are crashing. Did you know Hitler came back to life this last week? Did you know that?
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, they're doing a mock-up or a play or a video, I think it was on a television show. And so they had this man dressed up as Hitler.
Oh.
And he would walk the streets.
Oh, my goodness.
And they wondered, and so they filmed from afar. They wanted to just see what the reaction of the people would be. Do you know the biggest share of the people went up and embraced him?
Oh.
And said, we want you to come back.
Oh.
We want you to establish the camps again.
Oh, my
I'm serious.
goodness.
Have you not read it?
I haven't read it either. And I'm so into the news.
Oh, no, it's a piece of news.
Oh, I have to see this.
There's things going on all over the world. There is a shaking. There is an unsettling. And believe me, all the stages are set for world events to take place right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I thought you were going to mention, but the other thing that happened is in America in this time period, a giant statue of Satan went up in Detroit, went up. What does that say where we're going? And look at where we're going. You want to know the influence of the enemy? Look at where we're going.
If you study the Word, you will become a believer.
You want to understand what's happening in the end times, what's happening in our culture. One of the clearest things that will give revelation is picture gray, and gray is made up of black and white, but it's blended. So you all see it as gray, But now the gray starts going to one side, it's going dark. Here, it's split. The gray is disappearing, is splitting back up into what it's made up of, okay? Gray is ending. One of the dynamics of the end times is the ending of gray. The grays disappear. It's not just about, there is about darkness, but it's not only darkness, there's something else. But let's start with the darkness. Imagine gray, and then it's splitting up into what it was. It's polarizing. It's becoming dark on one side. Well, if you look at America, look at the world. You look back then, for instance, back in the 50s, 60s, or early 60s, about 5% of households, a child was born out of wedlock, 5%. Now it's approaching 50%. You've got gray, now it's becoming dark, black. There was always pornography in America, but it was in a red light district. It was under wraps in a in a bag. Now it's one click away. Now you have that then. Now you have 2 out of every 3 men are watching pornography every month. 2 out of every 3, 66% about that. Went from gray to now to dark. American television, look at it in the 50s, Leave It to Beaver. You have these things that are, imagine, I said, if somebody was back then, here's a test, watching Leave It to Beaver then, and they turn on in 1950s, instead of getting Leave It to Beaver, they get what's on television now. Huh. They would be shocked. They would be thinking it's the apocalypse.
Yes.
But that's what's happened here. And so one of the things here is this: when in the times past, the dark was still there, but it's being tempered like gray. It's being tempered by the white. It's being held back. Mid-century America, you always have sin, but it's being tempered by the gospel, by Judeo-Christian. It's all joined together. The culture has a joining of Christianity. But when you take away the gray, the dark comes out blatantly. It goes from being subtle to becoming blatant to becoming brazen. That's what we're watching. So, for instance, you had atheists back then, but they were kind of in the closet. Now you have atheists as well. You had people who might mock God, but they were pretty much quiet because they knew. Now they're all over the place. You had sexual immorality in the closet. Now you have it all over the place. You had all these things. You had, the unsaved part of America was unsaved is always off, but now you see how lost it is because it's revealing. The grays disappear. It gives you clarity on what is happening. But there's another revelation about this. In the time of gray, it's not only that the white tempers the black or the dark, but the black tempers the white. Now, let me tell you what I mean. In past times, you had America's culture was, quote, Christian. You had a Christianized culture, but you also had a cultural Christianity. And so what happens is in those days, you have things, but it's kind of all gray. Everybody's considered a Christian. Everybody's a Christian. Everybody's Judeo-Christian in some way, one way or the other. But what happens is, as it starts breaking apart, as the dark goes this way, and the other goes this way, what happens is it becomes clearer and clearer, and what happens is the middle ground starts disappearing. The gray disappears. That's the middle ground. So what happens is, as the middle ground, it means that cultural Christianity is disappearing. Nominal Christianity is disappearing, because what it means is you're ultimately either going to be totally radically Christian or anti-Christian, one or the other. That's what's happening, that middle ground. And actually, if you look at the numbers, it's nominal Christianity that's losing the most right now. And so what happens is, like example, politics. And this again, I'm just touching, but this principle explains so much stuff. Politics. If you go back in the 1950s, 60s, you have the Democrats, Republicans. Both, there are differences, but both, as far as Christianity is concerned, both consider themselves to be Christian. Adlai Stevenson said we're a Christian nation, liberal, and so they were all. Nobody was for abortion illegally. Nobody was for homosexuality legal. Nobody. But you had it all. But it was all kind of gray. It wasn't like radical Christian. It was just all kind of. Today, you look at the election, and you have one party that has become increasingly taking stands against the Bible, anti-Christian. You have the other party, almost in reaction, became more Christian, at least I'm not saying our faith is not in a party, but that's what happened. It became a reaction, so it became polarized. You look at that. You have the candidates who are saying, abortion, all these things, and then you have on the other side, you have several candidates who are saying we're born again. You didn't have that so much before.
No.
You're watching, it's a polarization. In the past, you had Billy Graham was doing the presidential, inauguration. He was there.
Yes. Yeah.
He wouldn't be allowed today.
No.
And that shows you, because if you look at his son Franklin, he's not allowed.
No.
That shows you it's where the country has gone. Back then, hey, we're all Christian, we'll all have that. Now, no, we're not all Christian. It's becoming more radically evil, but the other side is If the gray is, if it's pulling away on one side, if the dark is being pulled into this corner, it means what's left is going to be a radically on fire Christianity.
Woo!
And that's the same pattern, because it's going to force us to go either one way or the other. The middle ground disappears. You're either going to be all this way or all that way. It's going to force us to be like the book of Acts, which is the way it was back then. Back then it was very polarized. Well, the end times are going to be like that again. So therefore, the middle ground's not there anymore. You see people will switch, like in 1 year, a politician will say, I'm for marriage, I'm defending marriage. Next year, they are totally against it. There's no middle ground. It's radical.
Yeah.
And so what that means is it's that a gray Christianity is to be disappearing. Just like a gray evil, if the evil is removing the grays, that the people of God have to remove the grays. The evil is removing the grays to become radically dark. That means the people of God have to remove the grays to become radically good, radically bright, radically on fire. So gray Christianity will be disappearing. A gray gospel will be disappearing, because it's going to be, even watching how some churches, they're going totally with abomination. They're totally, because that's what, maybe they were always off, but now it's being revealed because the grays are disappearing. There's no gray ground anymore. It's disappearing. And so God is calling the end times are to be times of darkness, but of great lights in the midst of the darkness. People who are unmixed. God wants us unmixed by sin. He wants us untempered by compromise. He wants every gray area, every unclear area removed, so we will live a gray-free faith, walk a gray-free walk, believe with a gray-free faith, live a gray-free life. God is allowing the grays to disappear so the lights of God can shine like candles in the dark.
Amen.
That's what the time is. Wow. The flip side of us moving out of the gray is what we're watching in the world, moving out of the gray for bad, for dark, where that's the other side of forcing us to move out of gray for for light.
Exactly.
That's it. It's the same thing. It's going to force us to either fall apart or become great. These are the days that produce the greatest believers, always. These are the days that produces Corrie ten Boom's, produce Apostle Paul's, produce, Isaiah's. These are the days. God is calling us to go from good to great.
I mentioned this while you were here this week. A prophet talked to me on the phone this week, and he said what God showed him what's going on right now since the Shemitah and the harvest and all that's going on. And there's so much happening, but he said there wasn't a big earthquake or some crazy event, like a movie would be, epic movie would be made of. He said what God is doing is he's revealing basically the gray. He's revealing those who have really don't believe, those who are just going along with Christian. They go for the goods. They go for the loaves and the fish. They go for the goods, the blessed, the food, or whatever they're going to get out of it. And he said, this is a time right now. God's revealing who's going to go with him and who's not. He is breaking the gray.
It's kind of the difference between the multitudes and the disciples. I'm not talking about any one person, but in the end, those who are, the many, but who are never really in their heart, they're going to be gone. They'll be on the wrong side. But those who stand will be more a minority, but they'll be more real. They'll be shining because they're real. They're radical, and they will be more powerful. And God can do more with them than He can with a majority that's lukewarm and gray. Yeah.
Yes. And I think it says in Revelation that, that Jesus, He doesn't want us to be lukewarm. He will spit us out of His mouth if we are lukewarm. So that means to be out of the gray. You better be all the way with Him, or, hey, if you want to go the other side, then that's, whatever.
Yeah, it says, and Daniel says, in the end, the righteous will shine like the stars of heaven. That's what God's looking for, stars. It's interesting. The symbol of Israel is that menorah you have, which is the light that not shines in the light, but it shines in the darkness. Actually, could we have the golden one? Yeah, this is the symbol. This is the light of God. It does not shine outside. It shines in the dark. The light of God shines in the dark. And the end time believer, this is what it's about. And it says, it says in Revelation, the church is spoken of as a candle, as like this, like a menorah. And what's the sign of Israel? This is Israel's sign. This is the actual sign of Israel. Its official seal is this. Same thing. It's a light that shines in the darkness. And on the flag of the Jewish flag, or the Israelite flag, what is on there? The star. The star is a light that shines in the darkness. Israel has come back for the end times. This is the age for the lights that shine in the darkness. Don't fear the darkness. Shine into it.
Yes.
We are the lights. We are the stars of God. We are the
Amen.
lights of God.
Amen.
That's what it's all about.
Amen. Wow.
Over the years, millions would go along with religion, but they weren't religious.
They weren't real, yeah.
They would come and endure a prayer at a political meeting or a public meeting or anything. But now, all of that is being removed. And as we see, I mean, a few years ago we talked about Merry Christmas, and we're back in the Christmas season, and it was against the law. I mean, even, and I'm not anti-Walmart. I'm not try not to be anti-anything. I just love Jesus, but I'm anti the things that destroy the freedom of religion and the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But they literally outlawed Merry Christmas. I mean, I went through it. I saw it. I know the greeters there, and they told me, my friends that greet at Walmart, they said, we're not allowed to say Merry Christmas this year. And this was a few years ago. And I said, you got to be kidding. And I just said, I'm not going to tolerate that. And so, me, I went crazy on TV, and a few other people did. And literally, it wasn't my doing, but it was all the Christians that went in and said, we're not even going to shop at Walmart. I wouldn't shop at my favorite store in the whole world.
Well, there were several shows.
If they're going to say
several retailers.
Yeah, I know, but all the catalogs took Jesus out. They took all Christmas out.
Right.
Not even and I'll guarantee you this year you won't find a Christmas tree. If you do, in any catalog, it's a holiday tree or something like that. But it's just take it. But for a while then we pushed back. And this year I'm sure Walmart's going to allow Merry Christmas because they found out an awful lot of Christians weren't going to tolerate it. But we have tolerated so much.
Well, so how about if we stand up for more than a Christmas tree? How about if we all stand up together as believers in the Lord Jesus Christ in love, and we stand up together and we do the right thing. We vote. First of all, most Christians don't vote. Vote.
Amazing.
And
yes.
I mean, that is just a reality.
Yes.
If you don't have your voter ID, I mean, most of you probably do here, but younger people, I don't know, Zach and Sasha, if you don't, you need to get it.
Yes.
And, well, I know Zach does. And so, but I'm just saying, but really seriously, if we band together in one accord, in unity, we do what God says to do, then we could see some change.
They say most believers don't vote. If they did, they would win every election.
Absolutely.
And so, they say, well, there's a choice. There may come a time when you don't have a choice anymore.
There it is.
But how can you not, if you do have a choice, and there are clear issues, and there are clear issues that have had repercussions by who's been in the White House, who's in Congress, and they have to do with God. Many things so if we're called to be the light of the world, we have to affect the world in every way possible.
Right.
Politics isn't going to solve it, but it's part of the picture. The gospel is, but that's part of the picture. So I believe we should make every difference we can.
Absolutely.
Make a difference. Stand up and be bold. Don't be afraid, no matter what happens. Be bold. Be Elijah.
Bold.
Be Jeremiah.
Yes.
Be the heroes of the Bible. These are time for Bible heroes. We always want, we read about them. Well, now you can be one. You've got a situation where you can actually be one. You want to be like Daniel, you need some lions. You want to be like Paul, you need the Roman Empire. You can be a hero of the Bible. Now's the time to be a hero. There are things that will not be in heaven that are good, that are only in this life. There's a chances that you have only in the life you have now that won't be ever again. Chance you have that are good, and it's a really and when we look back, we'll actually see this as good. But the only chance we have is now, in this world, the once in an eternity world.
But you're going to have to find out who the friends of God are.
That's right.
You see, I have to die if they tell me I have to come against the word. I have to be willing to die from now on. And that's the gray is going to have to go. And we're all going to have to make decisions. Are we going to be on the Lord's side? Or are we going to just be in that middle ground trying to stay there? You won't be able to stay there because they're not going to allow you. In the old days, I would go to the White House. I would go to the presidents. I would go, and I always believed that I was supposed to minister to Democrats, Republicans, whatever, you know. But we're living in a day where you can't make kind of those decisions anymore. You know, the Bible says, whose side are you on? And we're going to have to make that. That's what you're talking about, Rabbi. We're in a time, but I would say a big percentage of the church world has made a decision. What kind of TV shows do you watch every night? That'll tell you where you are. Oh, boy, it's quiet in here. Franklin Graham, who I started this thought in my mind, he compares removing the Ten Commandments to the U.S., in the U.S., to ISIS destroying Christian churches. That literally in Oklahoma last week, they came in the night and took the Ten Commandments from the state capitol grounds. You see, I can't deny thou shalt not steal. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with any of the Ten Commandments? There's a foundation. The Ten Commandments are a foundation. We don't have any foundation now in America. We have a foundation on sand, and it's not going to stay. You have got my mind spinning like a top.
Yeah, he'll be processing this for a while.
Processing in all directions. But no, this is probably the most important message, one of the most important messages you've ever delivered. And we just barely got it in here on this show today.